I hear our start time, but if you would like to get started, you are welcome to connect to my live Lumio session. You can navigate to hellosmart.com. Feel free to just join as a guest for today. That will work for our purposes because then we'll sign in as teachers so we can start saving some of these ready-made activities to your Lumio library. Then my class ID is 12770. I can pop that in the chat here again if anybody joined after that was in the chat. But I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. All right, so welcome to our session. This is your passport to STEM engagement. Today's session, we are going to be focusing on some grab and go resources that are available with Lumio. We'll look at a few examples from that student perspective. So that's why I'm inviting you to join my live Lumio session right now. You're welcome to join so we can take a look at some of these example activities, ways you can engage your students in STEM concepts. And then we will sign in as teachers so that you can get started on building your Lumio library so that you can share some of these activities with students or with other teachers you may be working with. All right, so again, head on over to hellosmart.com. Once you're there, you can click the join as a guest option, and then my class ID is 12770. I will remind you of that information here as we get started on our first interactive activity. But for the interest of time here, we'll get kick-started on some of our housekeeping items. All right, so I will introduce myself. I am Sarah Stork, Smart Professional Development Specialist. So my background is as an educator. So I was a classroom teacher for many years. We're on the elementary side. Super happy to be here with you today to talk about some of these resources that you can find in Lumio to engage students. My email is on here, but I will give that to you all in the chat before we leave our time together today. And then you're also welcome to connect with us by using #GoLumio, sharing any of the great ideas that you have or how you might use some of these ready-made resources. All right. Well, I would like just a quick opportunity here to get to know a little bit about you all. So if you are curious about something today, about our session, maybe what sparked your interest in today's session, but what are you curious about learning today? So I've just launched a Shout It Out activity. And again, here, I'll pop this on my screen. If you'd like to join this live activity, if you haven't had a chance to yet, once you head on into hellosmart.com, you can join as a guest. And then my ID is 12770. But what are you curious about learning today? Feel free to use the Shout It Out. You'll have a text box on your student view so you can add your idea or share. And then I will share on my screen your responses here as they are coming in. Please let me know if you have any questions about connecting to my lesson or about any of the activities. Feel free to record all your questions in the chat. As we're going along, we'll keep an eye on some of your questions and thoughts. All right. So one thing I like about Shout It Out is that I can take a preview of what students are adding and then maybe sort and combine some of your ideas. Maybe we have some connections, but I'll just go ahead and click and we can blow up your responses here to start talking about them. So if you're curious about learning a little bit more about Lumio, love Lumio, great looking for other ways to engage students and teachers. Maybe what's the best way to have kids write their answers in a math classroom? Oh, that's a great question to guide our time together today. Maybe some resources to share with other staff. Oh, your STEM school, so anything you can take back, right? Great. Shout it out. So for this activity, you want to be able to better smartify your smartboard. So maybe you're curious about Shout It Out and you want to be able to use this easily with your smartboard or, hey, we're meeting virtually today and we're able to use Shout It Out. So I'll show you how to add one of these Shout It Outs. Maybe gaining experience with Lumio or Smart to share and apply and share with faculty you may work with, maybe becoming more familiar with Lumio. Great. Let's see here. Awesome. I think we took a peek at a lot of your responses. So thank you so much for your responses here. And some of these we're going to get to as we're going through our time together. So thank you all for sharing your ideas. So we'll kind of pull this into now, what is our focus? What's today's agenda? We are going to have some of that hands-on lesson experience from the student perspective. You'll be able to see 2 lesson examples. I pulled 2 examples that are available in the Lumio library. I'll tell you, one is more of a secondary math example, and the second example is more of an elementary science example, because I wanted to give us a little bit of a span of some different topics and levels. But when we hop into the Lumio library, I will show you that we have lots of templates that you can save and lots of things you can customize, so that even if you're not grabbing an entire lesson, maybe you're grabbing a template or an activity and you're going to customize that for your students or share that with a colleague. We'll dive into some of those resources that are found in the Lumio library that you can just save and use, or again, customize. And then hopefully you can start to grow your own library of lesson activities that you can share with students and teachers. All right, so let's take it into our first example here. We'll get into the Lumio library there then as we're going. But our first example, this is a lesson about the vertex form of quadratic equations. This is going to feature our integrations that we have with Desmos and with PhET. And then the science example, you'll be able to see another PhET example, but we're also going to fold in some other activities that you can easily save or create in Lumio. So let's go into our first page here. So what this lesson includes is a quick YouTube video for students. So giving them some of that context, or maybe you are watching that video to spark some interest in a new topic. You can easily add YouTube videos, though they will come in ad free, but this lesson, it's launching this topic for students with the video. I'm just going to kind of continue on through the lesson. So the next thing we might have for students is a PhET simulation. So this PhET simulations, you can head on over to PhET's website and save those simulations, or save lesson activities, or explore what they have, those different science and math simulations that they have for students. But what you can also do is add your PhET science and math simulations directly into your Lumio lesson, and then we can add some additional interactivity into that lesson. So this one specifically is graphing quadratics. And if you listen to the, I'll give you the directions here, but we also have the audio directions attached right to the page. But what this activity is asking us to do is head on into the vertex form options. So you have 4 options here, but we're heading into the vertex form. And what students have the opportunity here is to explore what happens when they manipulate the graph, what happens when they manipulate the equation. So really starting to spark students' interest in this topic and thinking about, what happens when you change, the X value, the H value, the A value. How does that affect the graph and what we're seeing? Does that change the vertex? We can turn on things like the axis of symmetry. So students can really have that hands-on experience with this topic. All right. So as students have that opportunity to explore this vertex form here using this interactive simulation, the other thing I love about PhET simulations is that they can come down to the 3 little dots and they can grab a screenshot of their work. So as students are working through, maybe they're manipulating the equation, they can go ahead and just grab a screen grab of what they created. So now we might use that then for some conversation around how are these values affecting the graph and how this looks. But we'll continue on here. And what we'll do is we'll pull this now into having students really examine another equation, and we're going to graph this equation. Now, right now, the way this page is set up, it is view only for you. But what I would want is to have my students interacting and to add to this page. So I've saved this right from the Lumio library, but now I'm going to do a little bit of that customizing. So I just saved this page right to my Lumio library from those ready-made resources. And now I'm going to click on the little person here in the upper left-hand corner. And I could give each one of my students a copy of this page. So then each student can work independently on graphing the equation and adding the values and solving this equation. Or I could have students working in a small group workspace. Maybe I want them to work collaboratively on creating their graph. Or maybe I want us to all work in a whole class whiteboard. So I am actually going to have us work together in small groups. So I'm going to click on Group Workspace. And what that's going to do is I can choose how many teams. So maybe I'll just split us into, let's do 3 teams. It's going to randomly assign you a team, but as a teacher, I can choose, where you're, which team you're working in. So maybe Rob, I'm going to move you to team 2, and Sam, I'll put you in team 1, and then I'll click to start the workspace. And so now students can hop on in. I'll just go into team 1 here. You can hop on into the shared space. You can grab the circle to make your points here on the graph, and then you can you can solve the equation. You can add your X and Y values. You can all work together and then create a visual that's connecting. Again, we're learning about vertex here in this example lesson. All right, let me pop in here. Any questions that we can address?
So Sarah, I'm not sure if this is just on my end, but I'm just getting the blank screen.
See if a refresh helps that.
Okay.
Yeah, let me know if it doesn't.
We also had a question in the chat about YouTube videos and if they're all ad-free, and I believe they are.
Yep, so when you add your video right in Lumio, it will remove any of the ads or commercials for you.
So for those of us in younger grades, would that mean they could access the YouTube videos? Because like at middle school, we can't. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Wait, was that question answered? I didn't see.
Correct.
They gave me
Yeah.
a thumbs up.
So Sam, yes, that works with the filter. I see the thumbs up.
It's worked for me, and I'm elementary, so.
Awesome. All right, you have some additional tools as a student to add to this space, to add to the graph. You have things like your pen tool. You also have a little gallery of some additional tools. So I can click and I can grab a shape, or I can use a line. But again, I also have that pen tool so I could draw the line on the graph. I can add things like images. So when we get a little bit more into some of our examples, maybe I would want students to add an image that connects with the topic. Or they could add links. So if a student created something in another platform and they have a link, or they have something in their Google Drive, they could add a link here right on the page. You also have your text tools, so you can type in responses or questions. As a teacher, I can hop in and I can write questions or responses to students. Maybe I would want to choose, as a teacher, I always write my answers in green or blue. Maybe I'll be specific about that. But I could write, what would happen if, and I could add, a question for students to be thinking about. I can see who's adding what to the space. So I want to keep students accountable. So Rob, thanks for adding the Y value. How did you solve the equation and find Y? So then I'm keeping students accountable as we're working, whether I'm working with students specifically in the classroom or we're working virtually, I can easily check in with students, see how the groups are doing. Maybe I need to go meet with team 3 and support them as they are solving this equation. Awesome. So we're finding some of those images, adding to the space. Great. All right. Well, let's keep continuing on so we can look at a few more examples, and then we'll start saving some of these examples to our Lumio library. But again, what you can add is a Desmos graphing calculator. So again, this one is all created for us in the Lumio library. We could save, but you could easily add an image to the Desmos graphing calculator. You can add equations for students. In this activity, I want them changing the values for A and H and K to then match the arch in the image here. And then again, we're going to use this to foster the conversation around what happens when you change these values, what values do each of these variables need to be set to then match the image. There's some extras and additional challenge tasks and things like that. You can add all of that inside. But again, like I said, you can easily save this activity to your Lumio library, or it's super simple to add a Desmos graphing calculator into any lesson. So if I come into the plus sign as I'm delivering my lesson, I'm going to come into the plus sign, the bottom left-hand corner here on my teacher view, and I could add a Desmos graphing calculator just right inside of any lesson. So if this is something that's going to help support the topic that I'm focusing on with my students, that's just your really quick tip here, is to add that plus sign and then add your Desmos graphing calculator and just embed that right inside of your lesson.
So we had a question in the chat about that. It says, can each student get their own Desmos within the file itself?
So I'm going to answer this, and if I'm not quite answering it, I'll chat a little bit about how it works and see if this answers the question. If not, let me know if I need to clarify any further. So what does happen with the Desmos, and this is specifically the graphing calculator that's built in right inside of Lumio, but if I were to add a new one, so I'm just going to click Desmos, each of you did just get your own copy of it. Now, it is something that you are using on your end. So the way that it works right now is that each of you now has your own copy of that graphing calculator. I could ask you to add an equation, or I can, if I go back to this, I'm going to click on my little manage people icon here and go to student pacing. So if you wanted to go back to 10, you can see your copy of the specific Arch Desmos graphing calculator that was preset. And then what I might ask students to do, again, similar to with PhET, where we each got our own copy of the PhET simulation, I would maybe ask you to take a screen grab of your work, and then I'm going to ask you to add that into our next maybe activity so that I could collect students' work that way. But Shayla, let me know if that didn't quite specifically answer your question. So the way it does work is that when I add the graphing calculator, each student gets their own copy, and then they can manipulate and add to their own copy of the calculator. Okay, perfect. All right. So again, let me just I'll pull this all back together so we can keep looking at a few more examples here. What I might do next is then provide something like a matching game for students. Oop, there we go. I'm using images here, and this one specifically, or the way this one was built, is using images. So we have the arch here, and then we have the equation. And so what we're asking students to do is match the graph to the equation. This one is set to check the answers at the end of the activity. So once I make all of my matches here, then I will check my answers, and I'm just quickly making matches. So I will probably have some incorrect here. But I can use the matching activity, and there's lots of ready-made match them up activities for lots of math, science, tech examples. So I will show you all of those when we head into the Lumio library, or you can create one really quickly for your students. But this is going to allow you to have that opportunity to practice some of those concepts, whether we are matching things like vocabulary or images, or I've created some for cause and effect. But this is just a way for students to interact with concepts in a different way. As a teacher, if I click over on my View Progress tab, so that's where I'm going next, is my View Progress tab. And I can see that 9 of my students have not started the activity. So as soon as students click to start the activity, I will start to see some of that progress. So I can see who is completing the matching activity. I'll start collecting also some class level data. So it will hide those results, but then once I click to show the results, then I can see, how much time it's taking for students to complete the activity, what were the frequent correct or incorrect answers. And then that way I can start to see what are some of the concepts maybe that I need to revisit with students, reteach, or review. So that's an example of a match 'em up game. Like I said, that one's already pre-made if you're interested in that one, but you can also just easily create your own games as well. All right. And I have my model activity and then head on into my progress. All right, so let's pull this into just one final example here on this lesson that we've saved from the library. This will be a response, just a quick response assessment that I might provide for students. So I am now going to check for student understanding. So in the equation, what does the A do for the graph of the quadratic? And so students are able to answer. I can show live results as we're going through. Again, we're giving them a few questions here to check that student understanding. I can use images, I can use text, and I can have just this quick check for understanding available for students as we're kind of going through. So kind of giving you a moment there to answer. All right. Now, once I have students have completed the activity, so I'm just going to go ahead and end this activity so I can show you what this looks like, but maybe I'll give you all just another moment here. Looks like we're about half done. And if you're like me, this might not be your area of expertise, and that's okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just end the activity. So again, I can show you what the data side looks like for teachers. Once I end the activity, I'm going to end in review. So I can see who's participated in the activity, who answered the questions, who do I need to follow up with. We can now see those correct or incorrect answers, and I can also click to export the results. So once I click on export the results, that actually just saved as an Excel spreadsheet. So now I have all of that data that I can use. I can see who answered correct, incorrect. I can see that it'll grade for the student. It'll grade their responses so I can see the accuracy percentage. So now I have included this response activity in my lesson. And again, this one's just ready-made. So I saved it to my library, used it with my students, and now I can grab that data and then use that to inform tomorrow's lesson or what maybe I need to reteach. All right, so we are concluding our secondary math example, and our next one will be the elementary science example that we will show you. But any questions there before we continue on? All right, so sounds like we're ready to keep rolling along here. So again, our next example is an elementary science example with electrical circuits. So, and this will feature, again, PhET, one of the science simulations that you can add to your lesson. All right, so we are going to start off with a label reveal activity. Now, this lesson was quite a bit longer, but I just picked out a few pages that I wanted to use today as our example, but you can easily save this entire lesson to your Lumio library. It's actually quite a bit more extensive than what I'm even showing here. But this label activity I love to use for STEM topics because I'm able to include an image and then easily add some interactive labels for students so they can dive a little bit more into this concept. The visuals are going to be really important for students as they're learning about a new topic. Or also, maybe I've included some questions for students. So this is giving them the information and labels, but maybe I would ask students some questions to start sparking their interest in this new topic. So that's another way that I really like to use this label reveal activity. Again, this is something you could create quickly for students and use your own images, or you could save an example to your Lumio library. All right, wonderful. So each of you got your own copy of that label reveal activity, so you can click and explore and learn a little bit more using the visual. But we'll go ahead and pull into the next page here. So I wanted to pull out another game example, and this one is a sorting game. So what we have here are the images of the circuits, and then students can drag, is that a working circuit? Yes. Nope, this one's not a working circuit. So there we go. So as they are examining the images, deciding is this a working circuit or non-working circuit, maybe this is a way to kind of activate their prior knowledge before starting this lesson. Or again, I can view my students' progress as they're participating in the activity. So I can see who has clicked to start the activity. I can see your correct and incorrect responses. I can check in. I have per student data as well. So I can check in to see how students are completing the activity, whether they are working live with me, they've gone to HelloSmart and they've connected live, or if students are working on this activity outside of class or during some asynchronous learning, they can go ahead and complete the activity. And I'm still collecting all of that data as a teacher so I can see how students are interacting with this concept. All right, so after we play that game, then I would have students explore the PhET simulation. This is one of my favorites. I would ask students to go into the lab, and then they can drag over the parts here to create their own circuit, see if they can get the light bulb working. So we'll want our battery and add all of these over to our workspace here. Maybe I need a switch. And there we go. All right. So let's see if I can get my circuit working. Woohoo! I can get my circuit working there. Again, students can build their circuit, click on the 3 little dots, take a screenshot of their work. I will collect all of my students' work. I'm going to ask them to reflect on what they created. In the last page that we'll do, but we'll take a moment here if you want to kind of click around and explore this simulation. So that is a great question there in the chat. Does the game show you students getting it wrong other than the visuals as they're playing? So yes, so the game, if I go, I'm going to leave this on student pacing so you can keep working on this. But on my teacher view, I will show my dashboard here. There we go. So if you look at my teacher dashboard for the super sort activity, so specifically the question that's coming into the chat there, I have some student data here on my shared screen. So you can see how many students have completed or in progress. I'll toggle on the activity results here. So now I can see the average score, time on the activity. I can see frequently answered incorrect or correct answers. So maybe those are some specific ones that I want to go back and review with students. And then I'm going to click over on student progress. Now, initially it will hide this information so you don't accidentally, show students data, but I am going to show our progress. And I can hop in here and I can see, okay, great. Sam had some incorrect and some correct. I can see which ones were correct and incorrect. I can see the score. And then this way I can check in specifically with those students if I need to follow up. And again, I'm monitoring the progress the students are completing it. Yes. So previously that data wasn't collecting in that activity, but now for the match 'em up, the super sort, and the rank order activity, you will start collecting some of that data, which can be really, really helpful as students are working through some of these activities. All right, great. Oh, and the second part of that question was, is that data downloadable? So at this time, I'm not able to export or download that data, but that is something that will be followed up on by the developers. So. Okay. Any other questions before we keep going on there? All right, so we had that opportunity to work in the PhET simulation, and now I can pull students into this last page here. So I am going to pull you back into teacher pacing, and I am here we go. I'm going to click on my manage people icon, and I'm going to turn this into a whole class whiteboard so we can all collaborate together. Now, alternately, I could give you all individual access to this page, or maybe I want us to work in small groups again, but I want us to work in a whole class whiteboard. And what I'm asking students to collect on this page is, what do they wonder and notice as they were creating their circuit? What did you wonder and notice about this topic? This is just one of the easy ready-made graphic organizers that you can add to any lesson. I'll show you where you can find them. So there are some great ones you can use with lots of different science topics or different lessons you may have. Again, I can toggle this back over to student pacing. So if students want to, go back to a game and then come back into this final activity as I'm collecting students' responses. And you have some tools on the left-hand side. You have your pen tool that you can use. Again, you have your images, shapes, lines. You can add your own image. So maybe you took a screenshot of what you created and you want to add that to the space. You also have your text tool that you have. And then you can use Immersive Reader with the text that you've added in Lumio. So students can enable Immersive Reader, and then they can listen to the text, or they can use the picture dictionary, or they can also enable some translations as well. So just some extra supports in your Lumio lesson for your students. All right, so as you can see, our responses are starting to pop in. And I can see easily who has added what to this space. So thanks, Rob, for what you noticed, added your thought. Great, so yes, so everything I've shown you today is a pre-made lesson, and this page here is one of the templates that you can add to your lesson. And when we dive into Lumio Library, I will show you how to find all of those, and you can add some of these templates to your lessons or have them readily on hand to use with students or share with your colleagues. All right, great. Awesome. We're adding some visuals there. That's cute. All right. So any other questions before we switch gears here and go save some activities as teachers? All right, I think we're ready to continue on. So you are welcome at this time to share in the chat which activity so far that we've seen that's kind of sparking your interest. Might not have been exactly the content that you teach with your students, but as you can see, some of these activities, whether it's a game or saving a graphic organizer, making that a whole class space, what's something that's kind of sparking your interest so far? And then we will go in and save some activities. Yeah, so it's a template that you can use. And we'll show you how to do that. Yes, and then, yeah, exactly. So I can just easily add the Desmos, and then each student gets their own graphing calculator, but then we can add an interactive whiteboard to go along with it. So you can kind of pair some of those tools to engage your students. All right, so feel free to add any additional thoughts in there. Maybe some ways, anonymous to the group, so all students' response would be more engaging than traditional ways. Yep, I agree. So providing students with just multiple different ways to respond to some questions, or to add their thinking, or what they noticed and wondered in a lesson. And that way, we're just providing those different avenues for students to share or ask questions and to get involved. Yes, I definitely agree. Like I said, I was a teacher, and being able to save something that was ready-made and use it for my specific purpose was always huge, because I needed to save time. So let's jump in and take a look at what we can find. You're welcome to leave the student perspective from my lesson. So if you go up to the 3 little lines on the upper left-hand corner of your screen, you can actually leave my class. And then we are going to hop into Google Drive. So I'm actually going to switch the tabs that I'm sharing. So I'm going to go to my Google Drive, and I would encourage you to do the same. So feel free to open up a tab and head on into your school district Google Drive. And I will show you where we can find Lumio just right inside our drive. And what the benefit there is to, again, not having to recreate the wheel. If you already have some maybe Google Slides that you've created for your students, you can just pull those right into Lumio, and then we can add some of these other pieces of student engagement activities. And you can just mix and match different things as well. So adding something pre-made to a lesson you already have pre-made, and again, saving you time, which is what we are here to do. So once you're in your drive, you can click on the new button in the upper left-hand corner, scroll down to more, and then you should find Lumio right inside of that menu. So what you're going to do is click new, go to more, and then you're going to find Lumio. So once you have found Lumio, feel free to click. You're going to sign in as a teacher, and you can use Google and your school account to sign in as a teacher. If you have not signed into Lumio before, it might ask you just a couple of questions. So just confirm a few things, and then it'll take you into your Lumio library. Once you've signed in as a teacher, if you wouldn't mind heading into the chat, or you can use some of the reactions here in Meet, and give me a thumbs up or head into the chat and let me know ready or that you've signed in. And that way I know we're ready to move on to the next part. Oh, these emojis, they've really leveled up the emojis in Google Meet. All right, so I saw lots of reactions, so I think we are ready to go. I'm going to head to my Lumio library here. Let me share this tab. Okay, so I want to just highlight a couple of things, and then we're going to dive in and start saving some ready-made activities. One quick thing, or 2 quick things here on your Lumio homepage. If you go to the Edit Class button, I mentioned earlier that you can use Immersive Reader. So to help your students access some of those STEM concepts, you may want to go into Edit Class and toggle on Immersive Reader. And then that way you can have it available for your students. The other thing I like to mention in the Edit Class button is the Manage Guest Access. So if your students are signing in as or going in as a guest, then the work that they're adding to the lesson, it's saved for you as a teacher, but on the student end, it won't be saved for them to continue working on. So you may want to have your students sign in using their Google account. If they're already signed in to, say, their Chromebook, it's a single sign-on for them. So it's very simple. They click on Google, they click on their name, and they're brought in. But you may want to consider toggling off this guest access just so you know which students are signing into your lesson, and then the work for them is saving. So that's just my 2 little quick tips there. But hey, let's head into the Lumio library next. So where you are going to be is your library, and what we're going to do next is toggle over to the Lumio library so I can highlight some of the resources that we have. But then I'll also show you how you can bring in your own lessons, and kind of just briefly show you how you could add some more pages to your lesson. But let's start by heading into the Lumio library. Now, I will tell you that they do feature some more, seasonal, timely lessons. But if I click in here, some of these do have some STEM concepts that are included. So even if I scroll down here, there are a couple of Pi Day lessons if you're looking for something for next week. You can save a Pi Day lesson to your library, and you don't have to use the whole thing. Maybe there's one activity in there that you want to save and use for your students or share with a colleague. If I'm back on this main page here, I really also want to highlight we do have some manipulatives. So if I click in here, if you have younger students that you're working with, maybe you want to save something like tens frames to have on hand or base 10 blocks. We also have algebra tiles, multiplication charts. So there are some different manipulatives, fractions. That's always a big one, just to have on hand. And so you can easily just save some of these manipulatives. These are quickly, let me just click on one to preview here. So maybe I want some fraction bars. Students are going to be able to drag and drop and create that visual to go along with that topic. So you can start saving some of those templates so you have them on hand. If I continue down, I will highlight the STEAM category as well. So we have some lessons like coding lessons, math, specific things like choice boards. This is also where you will find some more lessons that feature the PhET and Desmos integration. So again, if you were looking just for some more ideas, or if you wanted to save some ready-made activities, since that's what we are here to do today. So the circuits lesson, let me come on up here, electrical circuits. So if I click here, I can easily just save this whole lesson to my library. And again, you can choose the pages that you want to use, or you can save the whole lesson and use that with your students. So let me head back to the Lumio library. So as I'm kind of talking along and giving you a tour, feel free just to be searching and saving things to your library. I'll highlight a few things, but feel free to look for what is more specific to your instruction or what you might use with your students. The other category on this page, I will highlight, I'll come down here to the graphic organizers. So there is a collection of graphic organizers that are specific for some of those STEM topics. So maybe analyzing and interpreting data. So you have different varieties here. At any one of these pages, you can customize, save them to your library, import them into another lesson. You can turn those into shared spaces, or they could be those whole class whiteboards, individual pages. So again, lots of templates in here for you to save and then use with your students. All right, I'm going to come back in here. Now, you might be thinking that you have a certain topic coming up and you want to be able to find a lesson or an example or some ready-made items you want to save. So you feel free to go to the top of the Lumio library and type in a search topic. So I'm going to type in the word vertex. And I can see that there are some different lessons about quadratic representations. I want to save this specific one that I used today. And I'm just going to go ahead and save this to my library. And so if you search in that word vertex, you can easily save that exact lesson to your Lumio library, because maybe it's one that you want to be able to use, or that maybe you want to be able to share with a colleague. All right, so great feedback there in the chat. So yep, there are those certain ways to search where you can add those search terms, add some filters, and then subject areas. Let's see, that's locations. So that's probably not going to help you there. If that's still not quite working out for you, that's definitely some good feedback that I will take to the team. I know they're starting.
It's like the quotation marks things works the way that it does in most search items, or is it just because I'm searching on something that may just not have an item, so they're trying to give me best case?
Yeah, they might not have as much when it comes to calculus. They've hired on some more secondary content creators, so they're starting to add more and more secondary content, but calculus might not be one that they have a lot of examples on. All right, but with all that said, if the templates or example lessons here in the Lumio library aren't quite what you're looking for, I'm going to go back to my library. So I'm going to go to the My Library tab. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this new button, because again, we're thinking about some of the grab and go items. Part of that is pulling in what you might already have. So if you already have a Google Slides lesson, and it's that specific topic that you need, feel free to click import resource and bring that on into Lumio. Now, once you've brought it into Lumio, then you're going to be able to set that as that shared collaborative space or a whole class whiteboard. You can add more to it. Maybe you bring in your Google Slides. You can bring in a PDF. You can bring in a Smart Notebook lesson. You can bring in something you saved from the Lumio library. What am I going to add to it? I might add something like a shout it out where students can then respond to a question. I might add that response assessment that we looked at. I might add a Desmos graphing calculator. I might add that ad-free YouTube video as a page in my lesson, or I might be able to find a PhET science or math simulation that fits that topic that I'm looking for. So again, thinking about just quickly grabbing some extra activities you can bring into those lessons that you already have, instead of thinking about, oh, I need to totally recreate my lessons. Absolutely not. Import what you have, combine your different lessons together, and then add something like a graphing calculator or a simulation, something like shout it out. I'm going to pause here for a moment to give you a couple minutes here to keep kind of searching and clicking around, and then I'll talk about where to find the games. You can see the game button right there, but I'll talk about it in just a moment. I'll give you a moment there to click around. I'll chat about the games here for just a moment, but if you are still exploring and you're on a roll, feel free to tune me out here for just a moment. But if you are interested in using the games and maybe creating something that's, again, a little bit more custom to what you're teaching, it's pretty quick to create a game and add that into a lesson that you have. So if I click on game-based activities, label reveal was one that we looked at. You can bring in an image or you can do a search for an image. We also saw match them up. And then we looked at the sorting game. There's also quiz games that you can add, or things like ranking, but I am going to click on match them up. And I can add in some categories here. I am going to just here, in the interest of time, just add a super quick example. So maybe I'm going to add some quick equations in here for students, but I'm putting the correct answers just right across. So I'm putting in my equation and then my answer. I can also add images. So if I click on the image icon, I can bring in an image or that I saved. So maybe you have a quick screen grab of something like an equation. You can add that in or do a search for an image. I can choose how the answers are checked, whether instantly or at the end. And then I'm going to click next, choose a background, or you can customize your own backgrounds. So you can really take it to the next level. But I'll pick a theme and then press finish. And now just very quickly, I've created my own game that accents what I am working on with my students. So maybe I want to add those images to connect with some key vocabulary for students, or we're doing some sorting and classifying, and I'll use that super sort, or maybe we're going to put steps in a process together and I want to use something like the ranking game. So there's also a rank order game in there. That's just kind of a quick peek at some of those game-based activities, but they can be pretty quick to create, but there's also many of them that exist in the Lumio library. So you can also save some additional games that you might have. All right, so I am going to start to wind down our time here. We've got 5 minutes. So once you've saved a lesson to your Lumio library, or once you've imported something that you have and then you've added something to it, created your custom lesson, you can then easily use the lesson with students. If I click to start this circuits lesson, I can pop out directions for students. Now, my class ID always stays the same, but I can pop out the directions for students to join hellosmart.com, and then they can sign in and use my class ID. I'm going to head back to my Lumio homepage because I'm going to find then my lesson that I want to use. I'm going to click on the 3 little dots, and this time I might make a copy of this lesson. If you do have multiple sections, you may want to have a copy of your lesson for each of those sections so the work collects in that copy of the lesson. Or you might want to keep a template copy, especially if you saved some templates and things to your Lumio library. You might want to have your template copy to then use with students, make a copy and use with students. The other thing is I'm going to grab this share link. Now, the share link is really important. I can grab a teacher share link and I can share this with a colleague. So if you found something today, saved it to your library, you can then quickly grab that share link and share it with another teacher. They get their own copy of it. Or I can grab a student share link and post this for students, wherever you might share links with students. They will get independent access to that lesson so they can work on it. If you're thinking about using this lesson during asynchronous learning time, you can just grab this quick share link and share that out with students so they can complete on their own time. I will highlight in the upper right-hand corner, there is a little graduation cap that will take you to our training page. I'm about to share some resources with you, but if you are interested in learning a little bit more about the how-to, how to create Lumio or how to use Lumio with students or share with your colleagues, the graduation cap will take you to training. This question mark as well will take you to some, important quick links and things, including the request a feature. So if you were looking for something specific, even if it was something, maybe a topic you're looking for in the Lumio library, you can always hop into that request a feature and provide that feedback directly to the developers as well. We try to pass along as much feedback as we can, but they do refer to that. They're always listening to what teachers are asking for. So I'm going to pop in the chat here in our last couple of minutes. I see Sam has placed in the form to click on, but I am going to come in and pop this link into the chat that will take you to some additional resources. So you are welcome. I will put this on my screen as well. Let me come back into my file. If you head onto that bit.ly link, it will take you to these Lumio resources. So if you're interested in Heading into our Learn Lumio page, we have our Lumio YouTube page, our ambassador community, if you are interested in connecting with other educators. And then we have our regular live webinars, or you can check out a recording. We have our social media accounts as well, so feel free to find us by looking for @Lumio Social. If you have any questions as we are winding down our time, I am more than happy to answer questions. Let me grab one more link here, but I'm going to pop into the chat my email. So if you are interested in connecting with me outside of today's session, feel free to send me an email if you have any questions or looking for a resource. And then finally, if you would like to provide any feedback, the form that I'll place in the chat, this is feedback that will go to SMART. Again, my name is Sarah Stork. So if you'd like to provide some feedback on our session, that is helpful. Again, I will just remind you that Sam also placed in the form that you will need to fill out for our session, for your attendance today for our session. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If not, we are just at about time. So thank you all for your time today. I hope you had a productive day and that you have a great afternoon. Awesome.
Thank you. I really appreciate that you structure it so that we